The call came at 2:16 p.m. the next day. Private number. I almost let ring out of exhaustion, but something told me not to. Naomi Ellison? The man on the line asked. Yes, this is Gregory Hale, managing director of Hawthorne Estate. My spine straightened slightly. Hello, I'm calling regarding the cancellation notice. Silence. Yes, there are complications. Interesting word. What kind of complications? I asked calmly. The contract listed Lorraine Reed as primary client. Yes, however, the event was publicly marketed under your name. Yes, which makes the cancellation subject to reputational review. Reputational review, that meant board discussion, internal evaluation, not because they cared about me, because they cared about optics. Mrs. Reed is a board member, Gregory continued carefully. Board members are expected to avoid conflicts that damage venue reputation. Conflict, damage, reputation, words Lorraine had used against me. Now looping back toward her, what does that mean? I asked evenly. It means the board requires clarification. Clarification, that's what headlines demand, that's what society demands. That's what power structures fear. She canceled the event. I said calmly, yes, and it was not my request. Yes, and you have that documented. Yes. Silence. I want to be clear, Gregory added. This is not about assigning blame. Of course it was. It just wasn't about assigning it to me. This is about determining whether cancellation procedures were used appropriately. Appropriately, Lorraine's favorite word. This wasn't a vendor issue. I said, no, it wasn't a scheduling issue. No, it was personal. Yes, he exhaled quietly. The board will meet tomorrow. About what? About Mrs. Reed's conduct. Conduct, the word felt heavier than humiliation. Because humiliation fades, conduct becomes record, and Lorraine lives on record. Charity boards, foundation committees, country club presidency rotation. Public conduct is currency, and she had just spent it. What do you need from me? I asked calmly. Nothing formal for now. Interesting. We may request a written statement of facts. Yes, not accusations, not feelings. Facts, and facts are hard to argue with. I understand. I said thank you for your time. The call ended, and for the first time since the gates were locked, I felt something unfamiliar. Not revenge, leverage, not because I created spectacle, because she underestimated process. Lorraine thought humiliation was private. She forgot prestige venues operate like institutions, and institutions protect themselves. Daniel called at 3:07 p.m. They contacted her. He said immediately yes. She's furious. Why? She says you triggered this. I answered a reporter. She says you could have declined. I could have. Silence. Why didn't you? Because declining implies agreement. He exhaled sharply. You're enjoying this? No, you don't sound upset. I'm not. That's what scares me. That sentence landed differently, not because it was cruel, because it was observant. You expected me to collapse. I said quietly. No, you expected me to panic. No, you expected me to beg. Silence. I expected you to want to fix it. He said finally. I am fixing it. How? By not accepting it. Silence. You're making my mother look bad. She did that herself. You're ending this over a venue. There it was, the minimization, not the cancellation, the venue. This isn't about the venue, I said evenly. Then what is it about? Control. Silence. She thought she was protecting me. He said again. From what? You being different. Different, the word Lorraine had used the first night she met me. You're not answering me, Daniel pressed. Because you already know. Silence. And that silence said more than any argument. He knew. He just didn't want to admit it. If the board removes her, he said quietly, it'll destroy her. No, I replied calmly. It will expose her. There's a difference. He didn't respond, because he understands power. He just never imagined it turning on his family. She didn't think you'd escalate. He said, I didn't escalate. You talked to the paper. They called. And you didn't protect her. No, I didn't. And that's what changed everything, because for years, I protected their image, smiled at comments, swallowed different, adjusted to appropriate. But when she canceled my wedding to humiliate me, she forfeited my protection, and protection, once withdrawn, reveals things. The next morning, at 10:11 a.m., the board meeting ended. By 11:03 a.m., the ledger posted again. Board member steps down following wedding cancellation controversy. Steps down, polite phrasing, public consequence. The article cited misuse of client authority and reputational harm to the estate. No dramatic language, no villain framing, just record. Lorraine had resigned before she could be removed. Control. She chose resignation over vote. Because that's what people like her do. They framed the fall. Daniel called me at noon. She stepped down. He said, I saw you did this. No, yes, no. I repeated calmly. She signed the cancellation. Silence. You could have stopped this. He said, I didn't start it. That ended it. Not loudly, not explosively, just finally. Because here's what this was always about. Not the wedding. Not the venue, not the headline. It was about whether I would shrink to preserve their comfort, and I didn't, and that refusal cost Lorraine more than she expected. But the final shift, the one that truly ended it, didn't happen in the paper. It happened when Daniel came to my apartment that night without a ring. The Hawthorne estate updates its event calendar every Thursday at noon. I knew that because Lorraine had insisted we monitor it during planning. Prestige venues maintain transparency. She'd said, transparent, interesting word. At 12:07 p.m., the update went live. Saturday, June 18th. Allison Reed wedding status. Cancelled per client request. Not postponed, not rescheduled, cancelled. And because the Hawthorne estate is the most photographed property in our county, the local lifestyle blog tracks cancellations like it's a sport. By 1:40 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Naomi Ellison? A woman asked. Yes, this is Claire from the Ledger. We're doing a piece on high-profile venue cancellations this season. Care to comment? There it was, public, not explosive, but circulating. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I said evenly. The Hawthorne estate wedding listed under your name. Silence. We noticed it was marked client request. Client, not bride. Who was the client? Claire asked. I believe that would be Lorraine Reed. There was a pause. The Lorraine Reed? She asked carefully. Yes, Lorraine sits on 3 nonprofit boards. Hosts charity galas. Her photo appears in society columns twice a year, and she had just canceled her own son's wedding publicly. That's unusual, Claire said. Yes, was there a reason? I paused deliberately, because this wasn't about revenge, it was about accuracy. I believe she found the event imbalanced. I said calmly. Imbalanced how? Socially. Silence. Are you saying the cancellation was not mutual? I'm saying it wasn't my request. That was enough. Journalists don't need full sentences. They need contradictions. By 4:15 p.m., the blog posted a headline. Society wedding canceled weeks before ceremony. Board member involved? No names yet, but speculation travels fast. By 5:03 p.m., Lorraine called. Her voice was no longer smooth. What did you say to them? The truth. You're damaging Daniel. I'm clarifying. You're humiliating this family. No, I replied evenly. You did that. Silence. You're being vindictive, she said. No, I'm being factual. You're dragging this into the public. You signed the cancellation. You could have stayed quiet. I could have. But that would imply agreement. There it was. The core. She expected me to protect her narrative, protect the illusion, protect her control. Daniel is upset. She added, is he upset about the wedding? Or the headline? Silence. Don't turn this into spectacle. She warned. You want it elevated. I said quietly. Silence. You're making this worse than it needs to be. No, I'm refusing to make it smaller. That ended the call. By 7:30 p.m., the Ledger posted the full article. Names included. Wedding cancelled by prominent board member. Bride cites social concerns. They didn't accuse Lorraine of sabotage. They didn't sensationalize. They simply printed quotes, accurate ones. The phrase imbalanced guest list appeared in bold. The phrase not the bride's request appeared beneath it. That's all it took. Because in towns like ours, implication is louder than accusation. Daniel showed up at my apartment at 8:12 p.m. He looked exhausted, not angry, exhausted. What did you do? He asked softly. I answered a question. You know how this looks. Yes, it looks like my mother canceled our wedding. She did. Silence. You could have handled this privately. I tried. You didn't need the paper involved. I didn't involve them. They called. Yes. And you answered. Yes, silence stretched between us. You're punishing her, he said finally. No, then what is this? Consequence. He ran a hand through his hair. She thought she was protecting me. From what? Silence. You. There it was, not sugar-coated, not softened. She thought I wasn't ready. He added, ready for what? For your world. Interesting. My world. To working parents. Public schools. Practical birthdays, not charity galas. She thought I'd outgrow you. Daniel said quietly, and you? I asked. Silence. That was the first moment I felt something shift inside me, not rage, not heartbreak, clarity. Did you know she was canceling? I asked softly. He hesitated. For how long? I pressed. A week. The room felt smaller. You knew for a week? I was trying to convince her not to. You let her hold the contract. I didn't think she'd actually do it. But she did. Yes, and you didn't warn me. Silence. That was louder than any headline. You're turning this into a public war, he said finally. No, I replied calmly. I'm turning it into a record. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. You're different, he said. No, I'm just not embarrassed, because that's what she counted on. Embarrassment, shame, retreat. Instead, there were cameras outside her gate by the next morning. Because Lorraine Reed doesn't cancel weddings quietly, and society pages love contrast. Board member cancels son's wedding over social imbalance. The phrase spread. Not because I shouted, because she signed, and the real shift didn't happen in the paper. It happened the next afternoon, when Hawthorne Estates Management Board called me directly. Because cancellations weeks before high-profile events trigger review, and Lorraine didn't realize something critical. When you hold power publicly, you're audited publicly, and what they told me on that call changed the entire dynamic. My name is Naomi Ellison. I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks before my wedding, I drove to the venue to drop off final decor payments. The gates were locked. There was a white notice taped to the glass doors. Event canceled. At first, I thought it was a mistake. By the time I realized it wasn't, it was already too late, because my wedding wasn't canceled by the venue. It was canceled by my in-laws, and what they didn't expect was that their plan to humiliate me would be printed on the front page of the local paper 2 days later. But before I tell you how the news cameras ended up outside my future mother-in-law's house, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if stories about betrayal, public humiliation, and quiet revenge resonate with you. And tell me where you're watching from. I read those. Now let me take you back to the first red flag, because cancellations don't happen overnight, they're built quietly. I met Daniel when I was 24. He was kind, steady, non-confrontational, which, at the time, felt like safety. His parents, however, were something else. Elegant, polished, strategic. His mother, Lorraine, had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. She hugged me the first night I met her and said, "You're very different from what Daniel usually dates." Different, that word hung there. I laughed it off because I didn't know yet that different meant not approved. When Daniel proposed last February, I cried. He didn't do it at a restaurant, he did it at home, quiet, intimate, real. I said yes. Lorraine said nothing. That should have told me everything. Instead, she took over. It would be improper not to host something substantial, she said. Within a week, Daniel's family had money, old money, country club memberships and charity boards. My family, teachers, nurses, practical people. I wanted a simple wedding. Lorraine wanted spectacle. We'll handle the venue, she insisted. It's tradition. Tradition is a powerful word when you're trying to insert control. Daniel squeezed my hand. Let them help, he said gently, and I did. The venue was beautiful. The Hawthorne Estate, tall stone archways, manicured gardens, grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers. Lorraine smiled when we toured it. This feels appropriate, she said. Appropriate for who? She insisted on paying the deposit. It's our contribution, she said smoothly. My parents offered to split. Lorraine declined. We insist. Daniel told me not to worry. They're just excited. Excitement doesn't usually feel like evaluation, but I ignored it because weddings make you hopeful. 2 months into planning, Lorraine began correcting details: the guest list, the seating arrangement, the menu. I noticed you invited your college roommate, she said once, glancing at the spreadsheet. Yes. Is she suitable for a formal event? I blinked. She's my best friend. Lorraine smiled politely, of course, but the tone lingered, suitable, like she was curating a museum, and I was an exhibit 3 weeks before the wedding. I received a call from the florist. "Hi Naomi," she said hesitantly. "I just wanted to confirm the cancellation." "What cancellation?" Silence. "For the Hawthorne estate. The 18th. My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? It shows here that the primary contract holder requested termination." "Primary contract holder?" "Lorraine, I drove to the estate immediately. The gates were locked, a white notice taped to the glass doors. Event cancelled per client request. Client, not bride. Client, I called Daniel." "Did you cancel the wedding?" I asked. "What?" "No, your mother did." Silence. "Then, that doesn't make sense." "It did, I just hadn't wanted it to." I drove straight to Lorraine's house. She opened the door like she'd been expecting me, calm, composed. "Naomi," she said smoothly, "why did you cancel my wedding?" "It wasn't appropriate." "For who?" "For Daniel." The sentence landed like glass. "Explain." She stepped aside, invited me in like this was a negotiation. "The guest list was imbalanced," she said carefully. "My family." I asked. She didn't deny it. "Daniel deserves something elevated, and I don't." I asked quietly. "You misunderstand." "No, I don't." Silence. "You were rushing," she added. "It's been a year." It felt impulsive. "It wasn't your decision. It became one when we paid." There it was, the invoice, the leverage. "You cancelled my wedding to embarrass me." I said no. She replied calmly. "To protect him." "From what?" "Me." "You thought I'd panic." I said slowly. She smiled faintly. "Most brides would." That's when I understood. This wasn't about the venue, it was about power. She thought humiliation would make me small, make me grateful, make me pliable. She didn't realize something. I don't shrink. I document. And what Lorraine didn't know was that when she cancelled the Hawthorne estate, she didn't just notify vendors, she triggered a contract clause, one that required public disclosure of event termination within 21 days of the date, which meant the estate would have to list the cancellation publicly on their event board, and Hawthorne Estate is owned by the same board Lorraine sits on. Local press watches those boards, because cancellations of high-profile weddings are gossip currency, and gossip, in small towns, travels fast. I looked at Lorraine one last time before leaving. "You made this public," I said quietly. She smiled. "That was never my intention." Intent doesn't matter when ink is involved. By the next morning, the estate's event board would update. By afternoon, the local blog would notice. By evening, the paper would call. And by the weekend, Lorraine's attempt to humiliate me would be printed in bold, because if she wanted spectacle, I was about to give her one.